He was bright, ambitious, and walking home just a few feet from safety when he vanished. No screams, no struggle, no trace. In a place surrounded by silence, secrets, and old stone walls, his disappearance raised far more questions than answers. How does a young man vanish without a single footprint in the middle of his own campus? And why did certain people rush to move on, even when nothing made sense? This isn't just a story of someone gone missing. It's a story about what happens when truth hides in plain sight, and when the very place meant to protect you might be hiding something much darker. Let's go back to the night it all began, because everything changed the moment he left that room. It was November 9th, 2002, cold, quiet, and deceptively ordinary. Joshua Guimond had just left a small gathering at a friend's dorm on the campus of St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't upset. According to witnesses, he had simply said goodbye, stepped out the door, and was never seen again. No one noticed anything strange at the time. The walk back to his dorm should have taken less than 5 minutes. But when he didn't show up the next morning, friends grew concerned. His car was still in the lot. His wallet and keys were in his room. His computer was on. Panic hadn't set in yet. But something was off, really off. In a place surrounded by forests, lakes, and decades of quiet traditions, this wasn't supposed to happen. The question now wasn't just where Josh was. It was whether someone had made him disappear, and if so, how. By the afternoon of November 10th, Josh's friends began sounding the alarm. He hadn't missed class before. He hadn't gone out of town without telling someone. Something was wrong, and everyone could feel it. Campus security joined the search, and soon local authorities were involved. They started by retracing his last known steps, from the dorm where he was last seen to his own room just across campus. It was a short distance, too short for something terrible to happen unnoticed, yet no one had seen anything. No cameras had captured him. No one heard a scream. It was as if the air had swallowed him whole. His ID, glasses, and contact lens case were untouched. His bed was made. His room looked exactly as he'd left it. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken windows. But his absence screamed louder than any alarm. And the quiet of the campus. It started to feel deafening. Everyone asked the same thing: where could he have gone? As investigators combed through the area, they focused on the nearby lakes. St. John's campus was surrounded by bodies of water, and the natural assumption was that Josh may have stumbled, fallen, and drowned. Dive teams were brought in, boats scoured the surfaces, sonar was deployed. Nothing, no shoe, no body, no bag, not even a footprint on the muddy edges. Search dogs followed a scent trail, only to have it disappear halfway along the route. It was as if Josh had been lifted off the ground. The dogs simply stopped and circled. Then nothing. But if he didn't fall into a lake, and he didn't walk away on his own, what happened? The possibilities began to shift. Whispers emerged that someone might have wanted him gone. And soon, suspicion would turn toward a far more unsettling theory. Behind the ivy-covered walls and religious traditions of St. John's University lay a different kind of story, one not talked about in campus tours. But the years, the institution had quietly faced numerous allegations involving misconduct by clergy members tied to the school. These weren't just rumors. They were documented cases: abuse, silence, and cover-ups. Names had surfaced, reports had been buried, settlements were made, and through it all, the institution's image remained polished, untouchable. Josh was a political science student. He had ambition. He asked questions, he sought truth. And in the weeks before he disappeared, some say he was working on something sensitive, possibly even related to misconduct on campus. If that's true, did he find something he shouldn't have? Or talk to someone who didn't want to be exposed. The theory that Josh was working on something dangerous gained traction when friends mentioned his recent behavior. He had seemed more focused, even obsessed, with campus politics and certain university decisions. He had even discussed writing something, maybe an exposé, but no files were ever found, no drafts, no notebooks. His computer had been searched and, strangely, some data had been erased, not corrupted, deliberately deleted. The kind of digital wipe that left no trace. That discovery sent a chill through everyone. Who had the skills to do that? And why would someone go through the trouble of erasing files on a missing person's laptop? Suddenly, this wasn't just a disappearance. It was looking more and more like a cleanup job. And in a place known for secrecy, that possibility felt far too real. Weeks passed. The case went cold on the surface, but beneath it, suspicion grew. The lakes had been searched thoroughly, not once, but multiple times. Experts were confident he wasn't in the water. That left one option no one wanted to say out loud. Someone had taken him, but how and who? Theories began to splinter. Some believed Josh had stumbled upon something that got him silenced. Others whispered darker things about old ties, hidden rooms, and men who never forgot when. Someone asked too many questions. Police maintained their stance, no evidence of foul play, but families don't forget. Friends don't stop asking. And when years went by with zero answers, people started turning to places even the police didn't want to look. What they found there only deepened the shadows. One of the strangest elements in Josh's case was the total lack of physical evidence. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no clothing discarded. For a man who supposedly walked into the night and never returned, it was too clean, unnaturally clean. Detectives re-examined his computer, hoping to find any fragments of deleted files, browser history, or hidden messages. Instead, they found something odd. Certain system logs had been tampered with. The activity resembled what you'd expect if someone was trying to cover their tracks. To the untrained eye, it meant nothing. But to those familiar with digital forensics, it looked suspicious. Who accessed the machine? When? And more importantly, what were they trying to hide? A missing person is already terrifying, but a potential digital erasure, that suggests someone was thinking ahead, long before anyone realized Josh was gone. Investigators also learned that Josh had been researching controversial topics for a mock trial assignment. He had recently taken a deep interest in corruption and institutional abuse, particularly how power protects itself. He wasn't afraid to name names. His roommate mentioned that Josh had once said, "If I go missing, look here," and pointed to a folder on his laptop. The folder, deleted, completely gone. No backup, no recovery. It was as if it had never existed. That comment, once laughed off as a joke, now haunted everyone who remembered it. Was it paranoia? Or did he know something that made him feel unsafe? His disappearance began to look less like a tragedy and more like a warning, the kind of case where curiosity might have come at a deadly cost. Authorities continued to downplay the possibility of foul play, focusing instead on the lake theory, even after extensive searches had ruled it out. But the Guimond family refused to stay quiet. They pushed for outside help, private investigators, even media attention. Their persistence unearthed new leads. A local woman came forward, claiming she had seen a suspicious figure near the dorms that night. Tall, wearing dark clothes, standing still, watching. But her tip was never fully pursued. Other students recalled being followed at night in the weeks before Josh vanished. Some claimed campus security seemed more interested in silencing rumors than investigating them. And as fear spread, so did the silence. People stopped talking. Some transferred schools. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. But no one dared say what they thought out loud. As months passed, the case became a cold file with a lukewarm narrative. He must have gotten lost. Maybe he fell. There's no evidence of anything else. But behind that official stance, the questions only grew. Josh's parents launched their own investigation, refusing to accept the silence. They discovered discrepancies in timelines, witnesses who were never questioned, evidence that had never been collected, and an institution that seemed more eager to protect its image than find the truth. They weren't alone. Other families, connected to older cases at the university, began to speak out. Patterns emerged. People who vanished. People who were silenced. Secrets buried in layers of tradition and stone. This wasn't just a missing person anymore. This was a possible system of silence. And Josh, it seemed, had walked right into the heart of it. In 2006, 4 years after Josh disappeared, new hope arrived in the form of technological advances. Cadaver dogs were brought back to campus, their reaction intense and immediate. One dog alerted near a secluded building, an area never searched before. But the building, owned by the university, access was denied. No warrant, no entry. The incident caused public outcry. Why would an institution block a search related to a missing student? What were they afraid might be found? Under pressure, the university finally allowed partial access. But by then, the trail was cold. Nothing significant was discovered, or so they said. The timing, the delay, the secrecy, all of it pointed to something more, and many believed that whatever had been there had long since been removed. In 2010, a new twist reignited public interest. A former monk at the university came forward, claiming he believed Josh had discovered something he shouldn't have. The monk, later discredited by the institution, hinted at internal documents, records that may have implicated high-ranking individuals. He never presented hard evidence, but he gave investigators names, locations, and stories. Some of what he said matched older abuse claims filed in the 80s and 90s. Authorities said they found no link between Josh's case and past allegations. But survivors of those earlier scandals disagreed. They believed Josh had uncovered connections and paid the price. It was a chilling thought that a young man researching justice may have walked straight into the hands of people with everything to lose. The Guimond family, devastated but determined, refused to give up. They created a website, organized awareness campaigns, and even conducted their own interviews. Every year, on the anniversary of Josh's disappearance, they held candlelight vigils. The school responded with silence, no new statements, no policy changes, just controlled messaging and passive distance. Meanwhile, whispers kept circulating. Students who remembered strange conversations, faculty who hinted at internal tensions, and security staff who had allegedly seen more than they let on. Still, no one came forward publicly. Too much fear, too much risk. At St. John's, people had learned one thing over time. If you spoke out against the institution, you were on your own. And now, a student had vanished. The community moved on. But the Guimonds never did. They couldn't. Their son had disappeared, and they were the only ones still shouting into the void. In the background, other troubling cases began resurfacing. Allegations against clergy members linked to the university, some of whom were quietly relocated, others shielded behind decades of silence. Journalists started digging, connecting timelines. They found a disturbing pattern, victims who were ignored, records that vanished, and a repeated failure to act when red flags were raised. Could Josh have found something that linked the past to the present? Was he compiling names, dates, maybe even testimonies? If so, it would have made him a threat, not just to one person, but to a legacy built on secrecy. Some former students believed that Josh wasn't the first to disappear, only the most public. Others suspected a network of silence larger than anyone imagined. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about one missing student. It was about an entire system and how far it would go to protect itself. In 2017, a forensic review team was brought in to reanalyze Josh's laptop with updated software. What they found deepened the mystery. Traces of data connected to anonymous messaging boards, hidden folders, and encrypted files. Some of the content referenced sensitive subjects, institutional failures, cover-ups, and legal documents that were never publicly released. Most of it had been wiped clean, but the digital fingerprints remained. It was enough to suggest that Josh had been gathering information, possibly to expose something, possibly to protect someone. Either way, it looked like he was walking a dangerous line. The more they uncovered, the more it seemed that Josh hadn't just vanished. He had been silenced. But how? And by whom? The deeper the family and private investigators pushed, the more resistance they met. Doors stayed closed, files remained sealed, and behind every polite answer was another question. The emotional toll on the Guimond family was immense. Holidays became reminders of absence. Birthdays turned into memorials. They held onto every voicemail, every photo, every fragment of memory that still had his voice. And still, no arrest, no confession, no body, just emptiness. Josh's mother once said in an interview, "I feel like I'm living in a parallel world, one where my son is just gone, and no one else seems to notice." Her pain resonated deeply with families of other missing people, the ones who never get closure. Local support dwindled. The news cycle moved on, but the family clung to hope. Somewhere, somehow, someone knew what happened, and maybe, just maybe, they'd slip. Maybe guilt would speak louder than fear. That hope, however faint, was the only thing left. By 2020, true crime communities online began re-examining Josh's case. Reddit threads, YouTube, documentaries, and podcasts brought in fresh eyes. Some noticed inconsistencies in witness statements. Others mapped the campus and questioned why certain buildings were never searched. One anonymous user claimed to be a former student who had seen Josh the night he vanished, not near his dorm, but near an administrative building, looking agitated. The message was quickly deleted. The account vanished. Could it have been a prank? Or was it someone trying to tell the truth and getting scared? Digital sleuths kept digging. They tracked old emails, IP logs, even campus blueprints. Theories ranged from internal conspiracies to organized efforts to erase evidence. But despite all the talk, no hard proof emerged. Just fragments, shadows, echoes. The kind that keep you awake at night, wondering what really happened between one door closing and another never opening. In 2022, on the 20th anniversary of Josh's disappearance, a documentary team visited the campus. They requested interviews with staff and students, past and present. Most declined. Some agreed only to back out last minute. But one former staff member, speaking anonymously, said something chilling. There are places on that campus no one talks about. Places they used to use for things that don't happen anymore. When asked to clarify, the line went dead. The documentary never aired in full. Legal pressure, according to producers, kept certain footage from being released. Josh's parents were heartbroken. Another opportunity to bring light, gone. Another voice silenced, yet the attention sparked renewed public interest. People started sharing again. The case trended online, and for a brief moment, the silence was broken. But behind the scenes, the same shadow loomed, untouched and watching. As online interest surged, a former IT contractor came forward with a statement. Years ago, he'd been asked to wipe several university-owned devices, including ones from the dorms and admin buildings. He remembered One in particular, it belonged to a student who had gone missing. He didn't know the name at the time. Later, he recognized it. Joshua Guimond. The request hadn't come from police. It came from inside the university, and it was urgent. That revelation rocked the online community. Why would the school request a digital wipe before investigators could examine the device? Was it routine housekeeping or something more sinister? The contractor refused to go on camera, said he was scared, said he'd said too much already, but the damage was done. The idea that evidence might have been deliberately erased by the very institution Josh trusted was more than disturbing. It felt like confirmation of what his parents had feared all along. Even as new pieces emerged, law enforcement remained cautious. They reiterated the same line: no evidence of foul play. But behind closed doors, frustration brewed. One retired detective, speaking anonymously, admitted that early leads had been ignored due to external pressure. "We were told not to dig too deep," he said. "Too many reputations on the line." That statement, though never confirmed officially, echoed what many already suspected, that power had interfered with truth. That reputation had trumped justice. Josh's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was a symbol of failed systems, broken trust, and what happens when institutions protect themselves at any cost. Still, his parents held on to faith because they knew their son, and they knew he wouldn't have just walked away. He was still out there, somewhere, waiting to be found or remembered. A chilling discovery came later that year. A private researcher combing through old St. John's archives found a hidden subdirectory on an outdated server. Inside were logs of maintenance requests, staff schedules, and one entry dated November 10th, 2002. Unusual activity reported near Stumpf Hall. Request follow-up. Item disposed. The entry had no details, no explanation of what item was found or who reported it. The file had been modified, overwritten multiple times, but not completely deleted. The building listed, located directly between Josh's last known location and his dorm. What had been disposed? Who had reported it? Why wasn't this documented in the original investigation? It felt like a breadcrumb, one left behind not by accident, but perhaps by someone who wanted it found, someone who couldn't speak, but refused to let silence have the final word. Following the archive discovery, an independent legal team requested access to internal university maintenance logs and security footage from 2002. Their request was denied. The university claimed records had expired and tapes were recycled. This only deepened public suspicion. Other schools maintained records longer. Why were St. John's so conveniently missing? Even stranger, former students came forward saying they remembered cameras in certain halls. Cameras that, according to officials, never existed. What was real? What had been erased? It was becoming clear that the case had two layers: the surface story, fed to the public, and the deeper version, full of gaps, half-truths, and redacted lines. To find Josh, people realized they'd have to stop looking at what was said and focus on what was deliberately unsaid. The truth wasn't buried. It was hidden in plain sight. As pressure mounted, a whistleblower finally spoke, anonymously through encrypted messages. They claimed to be a former campus employee involved in cleanup protocols following serious incidents. According to them, a call came in the night Josh disappeared. A rapid response team was deployed, instructed to secure and sanitize a section of campus. The language was vague, no names, no specifics, but the timing aligned perfectly. Their story included details never made public: which doors were unlocked, which lights were left on, what items were moved. If true, it suggested not only that Josh had encountered something dangerous, but that a response was coordinated to erase the aftermath. The informant never identified themselves. Their messages stopped after a few weeks, but what they left behind couldn't be ignored. And for the first time in years, investigators began whispering the unthinkable, that this wasn't just negligence. It might have been an inside job. The Guimond family received a package in early 2023. No return address. Inside was a printed photo of Josh, grainy black and white, standing near a stone building on campus. The timestamp, dated the night he vanished. They'd never seen the image before. It hadn't been part of police files. And when they showed it to law enforcement, no one could explain its origin. Was it real? Was it a cruel trick? Or was someone trying to send a message 20 years later? Experts examined the photo. The building in the background matched an old maintenance entrance, now sealed. The photo appeared authentic, printed from a type of equipment no longer in use. It was either the break they'd waited for, or the most haunting reminder that someone, somewhere, still held the truth and was watching from the shadows. The mysterious photo reignited public interest. Independent analysts scrutinized every pixel, hoping for hidden clues. They found a faint figure in the background, barely visible, possibly someone watching Josh from the shadows. Image enhancement couldn't confirm much, but the presence of that second figure sparked new theories. Was Josh being followed that night? Was the photo captured by a witness or by the person responsible? What disturbed experts most wasn't what the photo showed, but how it surfaced. Someone had held onto it for 20 years. That meant intent, that meant calculation, and that meant someone out there still carried a secret, one that could bring closure or expose something much bigger. For the Guimonds, it was both a gift and a curse. Proof that Josh had made it farther than anyone thought, and confirmation that someone had been close enough to watch, and maybe close enough to act. Following the photo leak, investigators began re-interviewing former students and faculty. One janitor, long retired, remembered something odd from that weekend in 2002. An unusual smell near the service tunnels beneath the dorms. The tunnels, once used for heating systems, were sealed off in the mid-90s, but some staff still had keys. When asked if anyone checked them during the initial search, the answer was vague. I don't think we were allowed to. That area had never been explored thoroughly. The structure was unstable, it was dangerous, and it was quiet. Could Josh have been taken there? Could something have happened underground where no screams could be heard, no lights could shine? The tunnels became a haunting metaphor, dark, buried, and filled with questions no one wanted to face. Just like the case itself, permission to search the tunnels was finally granted, but only partially. A team of cadaver dogs and structural engineers entered the service corridors. The air was thick, the walls crumbled with age. One dog alerted near a sealed crawl space, but excavation was denied due to safety concerns. Investigators were forced to mark the spot and leave it untouched. Why allow a search only to limit it? Why block access at the most critical moment? Frustration boiled. Josh's family demanded answers. The university released a short statement offering cooperation within reason, but to the public it sounded like stalling. Once again, the silence wasn't just frustrating, it was damning. Whatever lay behind that crawl space, bones, belongings, or just old debris, would remain sealed, just like the secrets that had haunted the Guimond case for 2 decades. Meanwhile, online investigators focused on Josh's digital footprint. A recovered hard drive from a college project revealed fragments of encrypted emails, including one draft never sent. It read, "If anything happens, it's because of what I found. Don't trust them. You'll know where to look." No recipient was listed. The draft was dated just 2 days before he vanished. The file had been hidden deep in a backup directory, misnamed, almost lost forever. The words sent a chill down the spine of everyone who read them. It wasn't just a warning, it was a confession. Josh knew something. He feared for his safety, and whatever he had discovered, it was enough. For him to leave behind a digital breadcrumb in case he couldn't speak again. It was a voice from the grave, a final clue, and one no one could afford to ignore. The FBI quietly reopened their case file. Though never publicly announced, insiders confirmed that Josh's disappearance had been added to a broader investigation into systemic abuse and cover-ups in religious institutions. Suddenly, his case was no longer isolated. It was part of something larger, a web of silence spanning decades, involving power structures that resisted accountability at every turn. Josh wasn't just a student who vanished. He was possibly a casualty of truth-seeking, caught in a system designed to protect itself. For the Guimonds, this brought bittersweet validation. For years, they were told their fears were irrational, their questions disrespectful. Now, federal agents were asking the same things. But hope came with a cost. Reopening meant reliving everything, every clue, every dead end, every sleepless night. But they welcomed it, because finally, someone else was listening. To this day, the question remains, what did Josh find? Was it a name, a file, a conversation overheard, something that linked past crimes to present figures, something that, if revealed, would have unraveled years of silence? No one knows for sure, but the pattern is there. The erasures, the blocked searches, the sealed spaces, the frightened witnesses, and now, the FBI's involvement. Some believe Josh's story was never about a single night, but about a long-standing culture of fear, a place where truth was dangerous and silence was survival. Whatever he discovered, it was powerful enough that someone or something made it disappear. And until that truth comes out, the case of Joshua Guimond remains not just a mystery, but a warning. In the years following the renewed attention, new students arrived at St. John's, many unaware of Josh's story. The administration rarely spoke of it. His photo wasn't on display, his name wasn't mentioned in official tours, but late at night, in whispers between dorm rooms, his story lived on. Students reported feeling uneasy near certain paths after dark. Some claimed to hear footsteps where none should be. A few said they'd seen a figure standing still by the old maintenance building, tall, silent, just watching. Maybe it was superstition. Maybe it was fear passed down like folklore. Or maybe, just maybe, it was memory clinging to the walls. Because stories like Josh's don't disappear, they stain the ground, and no amount of time or silence can truly wash them away. In 2024, a civil case was quietly filed, not for murder or kidnapping, but for obstruction. It accused multiple university officials of knowingly suppressing evidence and interfering with the original investigation. The case never made headlines. A judge sealed many of the details. Settlements were discussed. Then everything stopped. No verdict, no conclusion, just silence. But the documents existed. Someone had gathered them. Someone knew who said what and when. It meant people were finally talking, at least behind closed doors. The Guimond family wasn't looking for revenge. They wanted the truth. They always had. And even if justice didn't come in a courtroom, maybe it would come in time, because the more that people whispered, the more cracks appeared in the silence. Josh's friends are older now, adults with careers, families, and grey hairs that Josh never lived to see. Some still visit the campus. They place flowers by the lake. Others leave small notes near the chapel, folded and unsigned. The pain never fully healed. The questions never faded. Each anniversary still feels like reopening a wound. But their loyalty never wavered. They tell his story. They keep his name alive. Because Josh was more than a missing person. He was a thinker, a challenger, a seeker of truth in a place that demanded silence. And even if his body was never found, his presence never left. It lingers in the people who still believe in answers, and in the quiet resistance of those who refuse to forget. There's a photo of Josh that his mother keeps by her bed. He's smiling, young, bright-eyed, alive. She looks at it every night, wondering what he saw in his final moments. Was he afraid? Was he betrayed? Did he think someone would come for him? These questions torment her. But what hurts more is the indifference, the way people moved on, the way some treated him like a headline, not a son. She once said, "They erased him, but I won't let them erase his voice." And that's what this story is really about. Not just the mystery, but the fight to be remembered. The fight to be heard in a world that keeps trying to turn the volume down on uncomfortable truths. Behind the locked doors, the sealed files, and the silent mouths lies a possibility that Josh's story isn't unique, that others knew too much, that others disappeared, figuratively or literally. 4. Stepping into dangerous truths. What makes Josh's case stand out is the light it casts, a spotlight on a system that doesn't like to be watched. And if someone did take him, if someone did erase him, then every year that passes without answers is a victory for them. But the Guimond family and everyone who still fights for him refuse to let that victory be final. Because truth doesn't vanish, it waits. And one day, even the darkest secret slips through the cracks. There's something haunting about a case with no body, no crime scene, no clear suspect. It leaves endless room for theories and endless pain for those left behind. Josh's case has become a canvas for speculation, but for his parents, it's not a puzzle. It's a person, a boy who loved political debate, a son who called home just to say he missed them, a student who once said, "I want to leave a mark." And maybe he did, not in the way he imagined, but in the way stories like his live forever, etched into memory, carried by strangers. It's the kind of mark that can't be erased, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Today, the St. John's campus remains quiet. The trees still rustle in the wind. Students still rush between classes. The lakes still reflect the sky. But under the surface, some things remain unsettled. The story of Joshua Guimond isn't over. Not because there's more to tell, but because there's still more to uncover. Someone knows something, maybe more than one person. And someday, someone might talk, whether out of guilt, fear, or finally, courage. Until then, his face will keep circulating, his name will keep echoing, and his family will keep asking the question no one has answered. Where is Josh? Closure is a word people like to use, especially when they're tired of talking. But for families of the missing, closure is a myth. There's only before and after. Before Josh vanished, the world made sense. After, every silence feels loaded, every shadow feels long. They don't want closure. They want truth. They want the last puzzle piece, the final message, the chance to bury their son with answers, not questions. Until then, they hold on to something stronger than justice, memory. Because memory is louder than silence. And when enough people remember, silence loses its power. If Josh were here today, he'd be 43. He might have been a lawyer, a professor, a journalist. He might have been the one exposing the very secrets that perhaps silenced him. He was brave, curious, sharp, and maybe that's what made him dangerous in the eyes of those who fear the truth. Josh didn't vanish because he was careless. He vanished because he asked the right questions. And as long as we keep asking them, his voice continues, echoing through every person who refuses to let this case go cold, because the worst thing we can do is move on. So now it's your turn. You've heard the story. You've walked through the darkness. Maybe you believe Josh was silenced. Maybe you believe someone's still hiding the truth. Maybe this entire case left you with more questions than answers. That's okay, because asking is where it starts. And silence only wins when no one dares to speak. If Josh's story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Keep his name alive. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Join a growing voice that refuses to let stories like this disappear. Because the next truth to surface might come from someone like you. And Josh deserves to be heard.
Always.